Every angel stands before God in heaven except for one. He is the only angel who was given a seat, a throne, a place of power. But here's the twist. He was not always an angel. He was once a man named Enoch who walked so closely with God that he never tasted death. So what happened to him? Why was he transformed? And why do some call him the Lesser Yahweh? This is one of the greatest mysteries of ancient texts, and today we uncover it. Have you ever heard of a man who never died? The Bible tells us about someone special who walked right off the pages of history without facing death. His name was Enoch, and today we're going to share his amazing story with you. We're about to take you on a journey to discover one of the biggest mysteries in the Bible. And trust us, what we found will make you see heaven and earth in a whole new way. Hidden in the book of Genesis is a tiny mention of a man named Enoch. The Bible gives him just 57 words. That's shorter than most text messages. Isn't that strange? One of the most special people in the Bible gets less space than it takes to write a birthday card. Enoch lived a long time ago, before the great flood that covered the earth. He was the seventh person in the family line from Adam, and he was Methuselah's father. While the Bible tells long stories about Noah and his ark, or Abraham and his journey, poor Enoch barely gets a paragraph. The Bible simply says Enoch walked with God. What does that mean? It doesn't just mean Enoch took walks with God. In those days, this special phrase meant Enoch lived exactly how God wanted him to. His heart matched God's heart perfectly. Here's something weird. Enoch lived exactly 365 years. Does that number sound familiar? It's the same as the days in a year. This isn't just a coincidence. It hints that Enoch's life was connected to the way God designed the heavens. Then comes the most amazing part. The Bible says he was not, for God took him. No funeral, no grave, no death at all. Besides Elijah much later, Enoch is the only person in the whole Bible who didn't die. God just took him away. But this disappearance wasn't the end of Enoch's story. It was just the beginning. While most people's stories end when they die, Enoch's story was just getting started. His disappearance wasn't just a mystery. It was the first step in an amazing change. Now you might be wondering, where exactly did God take Enoch? What happened after he vanished? The Bible stays quiet about these questions, but ancient books tell a much bigger story that will leave you speechless. We must continue this journey together, because what happens next reveals secrets about heaven that few have ever known. Without knowing what happened during Enoch's heavenly journey, we can't possibly understand who he became or why his story matters so much for us today. Before we reveal how this powerful angel connects to Christian beliefs, we need to know you're ready for this sacred knowledge. The ancient divine wisdom should only be shared with prepared hearts and minds. Science shows we learn better when we declare our readiness to receive new information. Type "I am enlightened" in the comments below. Then continue watching. This simple act shows you're ready to discover the hidden connections between this powerful angel and Christian traditions that few have ever understood. What happens when someone steps from our world into heaven? For Enoch, disappearing from earth wasn't the end of his journey. It was just the beginning of something much greater. While the Bible tells us very little about what happened after God took Enoch, ancient Jewish books fill in these missing pieces. Books with names like 1 Enoch and 2 Enoch written long ago, tell us the rest of the story. Let's follow Enoch as he travels through not just one heaven, but many heavens, each one more beautiful and scary than the one before. These old stories tell us that Enoch, still a human man, went through places no person was ever supposed to see. In one book called One Enoch, or Ethiopic Enoch, we see Enoch traveling through the sky where he watches God judge bad angels. These angels, called watchers, had left heaven to marry human women. Enoch became the messenger between these fallen angels and God, a human speaking for God. The journey gets even more amazing. In another book called To Enoch, or Slavonic Enoch, here Enoch passes through 7 different heavens. Each heaven had special wonders, different kinds of angels, amazing powers, and holy mysteries that human eyes were never meant to see. Can you imagine standing before the Creator of everything? That's exactly what happens to Enoch. At the highest heaven, there at the very top of all the heavens, Enoch stands face to face with God himself sitting on his throne of glory. During this special meeting, God shows Enoch secrets about the universe, how everything began, how the stars and planets move in their paths, and how all people will face judgment someday. Enoch learns things no human had ever known before, but the best part is still coming. According to these ancient stories, Enoch doesn't just visit heaven as a guest. No, he becomes part of heaven itself. His journey reaches its high point when something completely unexpected happens. Enoch changes into one of the mightiest angels ever created, an angel named Metatron. This wasn't just getting a new name or a new job. It was a complete change into a being of amazing power. Enoch the man was gone, and in his place stood Metatron, the mighty angel. But this special change was only the beginning of an even more amazing story. Without understanding what Metatron became and the power he received, we can't understand why his very existence caused such big problems in heaven. Now we'll show you how this former human received something no other angel ever had: a body made of fire, wings that stretched across the universe, and eyes that could see everything at once. The man who once walked on earth was about to become something beyond imagination. Long ago, when the world was still young, a man named Enoch disappeared from earth, but his journey was far from over. In fact, it had just begun. We're going to tell you what happened to Enoch after God took him from our world. This story comes from an ancient text called the Third Book of Enoch, where a holy man named Rabbi Ishmael had an amazing vision. In this vision, Rabbi Ishmael traveled up to heaven, where he met a mighty angel named Metatron. The angel shined brighter than the sun, and then Metatron shared a secret that left Rabbi Ishmael speechless. I was once Enoch, the son of Jared, who walked the earth. How could a human become such a powerful angel? The answer lies in what happened when Enoch first arrived in heaven. God looked at Enoch with love and spoke words that changed everything. Let Enoch be clothed with my glory. The moment God said these words, something wonderful and scary began to happen. Enoch's skin started to glow. Then it changed into flame. His whole body began to shine and grow. He stretched bigger and bigger until he was as tall as the world itself. Can you imagine someone that big? Where once stood a regular man, now towered a being of pure light, but God wasn't finished yet. He gave Enoch a special gift to 72 huge wings that spread across the sky. Each wing was bigger than a whole world. Then came another miracle. God gave him 365,000 eyes, not just regular eyes, but eyes that burned like the sun. With these eyes, Metatron could see everything happening anywhere in creation. God placed a beautiful crown on Metatron's head. Then, with his finger, God wrote secret words on the crown using letters made of fire. These words taught Metatron all the mysteries of heaven and earth, things no human had ever known before. The transformation was so amazing that even the other angels couldn't look at him. They covered their faces and trembled when Metatron passed by, just like they did when God himself appeared. Through this magical change, Enoch became Metatron, the Prince of the Divine Presence. This special title meant he could stand closer to God than any other angel in heaven. But this wasn't the end of the story. Metatron's new power was so great that it caused big problems in heaven. Some began to wonder, was Metatron becoming too much like God himself? We need to continue our story because what happened next shows us something that will leave you amazed. Without knowing about the special seat God gave to Metatron, you'll miss the most shocking part of this heavenly tale. In the courts of heaven, there's one rule that never changes. God sits on his throne, and everyone else stands. Every angel, no matter how powerful, stands before the King of the universe. That's just how things work in heaven. But we're about to tell you about something that broke all the rules. Something that had never happened before and would never happen again. After Enoch became the mighty angel Metatron, God did something that shocked all of heaven. He gave Metatron his very own throne. Can you believe it? While millions of angels had to stand in God's presence, Metatron was invited to sit down right next to God himself. This wasn't just any seat. It was a throne of glory that looked almost like God's own throne. When the other angels saw this, they couldn't believe their eyes. Some even started to whisper among themselves, but the throne was just the beginning. God gave Metatron special jobs that no other angel had ever been given. He put Metatron in charge of judging the other angels. Imagine that, a former human telling ancient angels what to do and where they belonged in heaven's ranks. Then came the most surprising part. God gave Metatron a title that made the heavens tremble. He called him the Lesser Yahweh. Now Yahweh was God's own special name, the most holy name in all creation. By sharing even a part of this name with Metatron, God was showing how much authority he had given him. God even placed his own holy name inside Metatron, just as he had promised long ago in the book of Exodus. My name is in him. This meant that in some ways, Metatron could speak with God's own voice when giving commands. As heaven's special writer, Metatron kept track of everything people did on earth. With his thousands of eyes, he could see every good deed and every sin. He wrote them all down in a special book called the Book of Life. Metatron's seat beside God made him different from every other angel ever created. While they all stood, he sat. While they served, he helped rule. He wasn't God, not even close. But he reflected God's glory in a way no other being ever had. But this special position soon led to big trouble. One day, a holy man named Elisha ben Abiah had a vision of heaven. When he saw Metatron sitting on a throne next to God, he cried out words that would rock the foundations of heaven itself. We must hear what happened next, because without knowing about the punishment that fell on Metatron, we'll never understand the true limits of angelic power or how God protects his unique place as the one true ruler of all creation. Have you ever wondered what happens when an angel's glory becomes so magnificent that even a wise teacher mistakes him for God? We're about to explain one incident that shook the heavens themselves. In ancient Jewish tradition, there lived a respected teacher named Elisha ben Abiah. He was known for his wisdom and deep understanding of sacred texts, but one day something extraordinary happened that would change everything. Elisha had a mystical vision where he was lifted up to see the heavenly realms. As his spiritual eyes adjusted to the glory around him, he noticed something that didn't seem right. There in the courts of heaven sat Metatron on a throne. Now this might not sound strange to us, but in Jewish belief this was shocking. Angels were supposed to stand in God's presence. Sitting was reserved for God alone. Imagine the confusion and fear that filled Elisha's heart as he watched this scene unfold. In his shock, Elisha cried out words that would echo through history. "There are two powers in heaven, Dar." These 6 words sparked immediate divine action. You see, Jewish faith is built on the belief that God is one. There cannot be 2 divine powers ruling the universe. What happened next was dramatic. The heavenly court erupted in action. Metatron, despite his exalted position, was immediately punished with 60 fiery lashes. Yes, you heard that right. 60 burning stripes across his back. This wasn't just any punishment. It was a powerful statement that even this mighty angel remain a servant, not a god. The message was clear. No matter how glorious Metatron appeared, he was still a created being under God's authority. But what about Elisha? This vision shattered his understanding of heaven. The man who went up as a respected teacher came down changed forever. He became known as Ahir, the other one, because he turned away from his faith after what he saw. This ancient story raises deep questions that still echo today. How close can a created being come to divine glory before crossing a line? What are the boundaries between God and his most exalted servants? The 60 lashes that fell on Metatron's back remind us of something profound, that there is an uncrossable gap between Creator and creation. No matter how high Metatron was raised, he remained under authority. But this controversy isn't just an isolated incident. It connects directly to questions that would shake the foundations of faith for centuries to come. And that brings us to something even more fascinating about Metatron's story. We've seen how Metatron's seated position caused such controversy in heaven. But what if we told you this ancient figure shares striking similarities with how early Christians understood Jesus? The connection might surprise you. Both Jewish and Christian traditions struggled with a big question: how does an unseen God connect with the visible world? Both found answers in divine mediators, beings who bridge the gap between heaven and earth. While Metatron doesn't appear in Christian scriptures, the idea of a heavenly mediator runs through both traditions like a golden thread. Think about it too. Metatron sits at God's right hand, a position of honor and authority. In Christian teaching, Jesus is described the same way, seated at the Father's right hand. The parallels don't stop there. Both Metatron and Jesus are described as bearing God's name. In Jewish mystical texts, Metatron is called the Lesser Yahweh, suggesting he carries God's authority. Similarly, Jesus is given the name above every name in Christian scripture. Both figures reflect divine glory so intensely that they become its living expression. Metatron's body transformed with countless eyes and wings, while Jesus is called the radiance of God's glory. But here's where the paths. Divine Metatron began as a human named Enoch, who was elevated to angelic status. Jesus, according to Christian belief, was the eternal Word who existed before creation and took on human form. These parallels show how both traditions were wrestling with similar questions. How does God interact with creation? Can divine authority be shared? What happens when heaven touches earth? Some scholars wonder if early Christian thinkers were influenced by stories of Metatron when they describe Jesus' heavenly role. Others believe these similarities simply show how both traditions independently approach the same deep questions about God's relationship with humanity. What makes this connection so fascinating is that Metatron represents one of the most developed examples in Jewish thought how God might share authority with another being. This concept would find its fullest expression in Christian theology through Jesus Christ. We've explored how Metatron sits beside God while other angels stand, and how his power raised questions about divine authority. But this is just one part of God's amazing heavenly army. Have you ever wondered what happens when God's angels aren't just scribes but warriors? What happens when heaven's power is unleashed against enemies? Imagine an entire army in 85,000 strong ready for battle. Now imagine them facing not another army, but just one angel of the Lord. What happened next was one of the most stunning displays of heavenly power ever recorded. This wasn't just any victory. This was God showing what happens when his people pray and he sends help from above. If you thought Metatron's story was amazing, this will show you a whole new side of God's angels. Click on the video being displayed on your screen right now to see how prayers do work, and